Hello everyone, this is Professor Bogdan again. Session 2 is ahead of us and we need to prepare for that. In the first session we looked at the things to observe, and that included grammar elements, keywords, figures of speech, and so forth. And we practiced that, and that's a tool that you are going to continue to use throughout this course, especially in your final paper. So keep practicing and keep remembering how to use that, sharpen that skill. Today we are going to look at two other things that are important in our interpretive journey. And one of them is the historical cultural context in which the book was written. So why is that important? Well, we need to know who is the author, what is his background, what is his relationship with the audience, what was the situation or the circumstances that prompted him to write what he wrote, where was he at the time when he wrote, what was the culture in the city where the church was located. Were there struggles in the church? Was there persecution? Were there false teachers? We need to understand who and what and where and when, so that when we read the author's words, we will be able to put ourselves to get into his mind and see what he saw with the eyes of his mind as he wrote that book. He saw, like in the book of Ephesians, he saw the church of Ephesus, but he saw also the city of Ephesus. And he remembers where the believers used to be before they came to Christ. What was the religious life in Ephesus before they accepted Christ? What were they facing these days? What were the dangers ahead of them that Paul had in mind as he was writing? And so we are going to look, whenever you look at the historical cultural context, we look at the author and ask the question. By the way, if you open your book at page 124, you will see at the bottom of the page a list of questions, and use those as guideline as you work through your historical cultural background. The first 6 questions are: who was the author? What was his background? When did he write? What was the nature of his ministry? What kind of relationship did he have with the audience? And why was he writing? So all these 6 questions have to do with the author. Now, in case of Paul, when you are going to work on Ephesians, of course, there is a lot that you could say about Paul's background. However, due to the length or the shortness of your paper, you need to keep your historical culture background to no more than about a page and a half, maximum 2. Because you have so much more that you need to write in your observation part that there is no room to go too far. So only write those things about his background that relate to his relationship with the Ephesians. For instance, some students were writing about Paul's persecution of believers before he came to Christ, and his conversion experience. All of those are good, but not in this context. In this context, what we need to know is only that part of the background that relates to the church of Ephesus. How did he end up in Ephesus? When did he come? What did he find? What was his relationship with the church? What happened there? What was the culture, the historical or cultural background in Ephesus? And so what was his relation with the church? I think I said that. So those are the things that we need to know, not the remote experience of his conversion. That is behind, we all know it, so, but it's not relevant to this particular study. Now, the next 5 questions on this page 124 in Grasping God's Word is: who was the biblical audience? Of course, in Ephesus, in the book of Ephesians, obviously the church, the audience was the believers of the church in Ephesus. What were their circumstances? So you need to study that, what they were going through. Did they have persecution? Did they have false teachers? Was there a danger that false teachers were going to come? You need to know, because when Paul is talking about certain things, he has in mind those things, and we need to understand. Those words, certain words, will make much more sense to us when we know what was going on. For example, when Paul says in Ephesians, you were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you formerly lived, but God in his great mercy brought you to life. So when he was talking about dead in trespasses and sins, what did he have in mind? Well, before they came to Christ, these believers used to probably worship, like all the other non-believers at the time, worship the goddess Diana. And she was the goddess of fertility. And there was a huge temple there. And people were having a feast once a year that involved a lot of sexual promiscuity. And there was a lot of business going on based on the goddess Diana. People were making sculptures like of the temple or of the goddess, and were selling them to the tourists so that they will make money. They will build a lot of wealth. What do we know about the city? It was a very wealthy city. It was a port, and all the roads were going through Ephesus to Rome, and from Rome and toward other centers in that region. So that tells us, gives us a picture of what it's kind of like. You know, I just came from Paris this summer, and I went to the Louvre Art Museum, and I bought things there, souvenirs. I bought a little statue of the of the Eiffel Tower. So somebody makes a lot of money by making those little things that we buy with a lot of money because we want to keep a memory. So, and they make money in Paris. They make money from tourists. Hotels included, restaurants, and museums, and other places. So imagine that in Ephesus, where people are traveling to Rome. So that tells us a little bit when Paul says, you are dead in trespasses and sins. They know where they were. They know how they used to live before they found Christ. They used to be among those who worshiped the goddess Diana and practiced sexual promiscuity because they didn't know any better. But God. So we have a contrast between where they were and where God brought them. So that is why it's important that we understand the historical culture background. Now, there are the last questions here on page 125 tells us, are there any other historical cultural factors that must or might shed light on the book? So you look at the economy, you look at, let's see what the author mentions here. The political issues, the social and religious situation, the customs, and of course the geography and topography. So all those are part of the other aspects that may throw light. So only select from your reading those things that throw light on your passage and on the book of Ephesians as you write. So 3 things you write in your historical cultural background as you write your paper. Something about the author. Follow those guidelines, the questions that I mentioned on page 124. About the audience. Follow the questions on 124-25, the 5 questions, and then other historical cultural elements. Write those, but only those things that are relevant. So that's going to be your paper on the historical culture background. Now, I want to show you some resources online that you could use to write your paper. All right, here we go. One of the very valuable resources online where you could find a lot of information on all kind of things is the BibleStudyTools.com. And as you go to the BibleStudyTools.com here, that's the page you find, and then you click on Study, and then go to Encyclopedia. When you get to Encyclopedia, you see these three options. Choose the third one, International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. Click on that. And now you see the alphabet here. So you want to study about Ephesus and Ephesians. So you go to letter E, and then scroll down to Ephesus. Here we go. Ephesians. All right. The one thing that you find in Ephesians here, very important, and I don't want you to miss it in your paper. This is the most important historical culture background that you can find, which is in the book of Acts, chapter 19, verse 28, 34, 35, and then the book of Acts 29. So read these chapters, because these chapters tell us about Paul's time, the time that Paul spent in Ephesus. Now go back and then go to the epistle of the Ephesians. Here, what do you find? The content of the epistle, the authenticity, is Paul really the real author, or some people say that he's not. So you need to see and study about that. External and internal evidence of Paul's authorship. Place and date of writing, destination, of course he wrote to Ephesus, the title, and the relationship of this letter to the New Testament, other New Testament writings. So you find this about the authenticity, external evidence, and so forth. Of course, there is a lot to read. You read it because you need to understand, but you only give that information that is relevant and make it very brief. Go back. Now let's read about Ephesus, about the city. And here we find a lot of things about the city, the traditions, the goddess Diana, or she is called Artemis. And so read about that, and be sure to include especially the religious, political, and economic situation in Ephesus. So, and then after you wrote about this is about the audience, right? The Ephesians, and about Ephesus. And then, of course, other cultural elements. So this is a great tool where you find historical cultural background. When you go to understudy, you will see that you find Bible study, you find commentaries, concordances, dictionaries, encyclopedias, histories, authors, and so forth. So, like if you go to Bible study, you find a lot of topics here, but that's for another time. So this tool is going to help you with your historical cultural background. Okay, so I'm going to talk in the next video about word study, and I'm going to show you some resources that are going to make your job really nice and pleasant and easy and fascinating too. So see you next time.